Just so folks know too, this is Sulphur Run. Yes. This is the train derailment is just upstream here. This creek is the one that was, tons of contaminants came right down here after the derailment, and we've seen sheen of chemical sheen in here every single time we visited so far. And this is also kind of the beginning of the tunnel where this goes under several homes, including Krissy's home that we talked with earlier today, actually. Excited to see Krissy once again here. Thanks for, I think we've probably done 5 of these at this point. This is our 5th trip back to East Palestine. So we're gonna start off this though. Krissy, you've told us in the past that, we all know Sulphur Run runs under your backyard, basically right up, right near your basement here. Yes. When the creek is higher, the water generally is, you have flooding issues, right?
Yes. Yes.
So that's something that has happened for years and years and years leading up to this.
Yes. We actually, Dr. Rick Shaw, running for Congress, being our creek ranger, he went into the tunnel and found something out. Here, we knew that Sulphur Run got its name from everyone's sewers going into it many years ago. Well, when the city updated the sewage system, they never closed off the pipes. So my floor drain in my basement actually goes right into the tunnel. They closed off the city building after the workers got sick, but nobody's did that for the residents. So.
Right. So we're going to actually start off by just going down. You've said that they've been kind of running more water through the creeks recently. So you have recently been having some flooding down there, a little bit of water at least here and there.
There's water coming up even when it doesn't rain now from them messing with the wetlands. Right. And they're all aware, the EPA, Norfolk Southern, the city, everyone's aware.
Right.
That those pipes, they had talked to me about closing those pipes. Right. But that was in July, and nobody's gotten around to do that
And
yet.
here we are a year later, and we're still unsure.
And we're still
we literally haven't been downstairs yet, so let's go see. Okay. There may or may not be water down there now. We'll find out, but we'll at least be able to see where the drain is.
Yes. A little bit.
Watch your step here, too. The first step's big, John. It blows my mind that these houses were built over this creek.
Yeah.
Like what? What?
I don't think I've seen that anywhere else.
No. No, this house can't have a basement.
I don't think that they do. I know Krissy does.
Krissy does, but for her, the creek kind of is behind her basement.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Krissy's basement is against this right wall, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, it did come off that rock.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha.
Yesterday, it was deeper.
Gotcha.
That's where the water lines came, but they did that. It was yesterday or the day before when they released.
Yep. Yeah, so this is you can see, so you have the sump pump in here because this is the section of the basement that, when the water's high will flood. And this is the drain that connects
right into the tunnel.
Connects right down, and that's the one that Dr. Chai actually went and saw it from underneath.
Yes.
Yep, okay.
He filmed that for me, so I would have the proof of it.
Right.
We have always had water after heavy rains.
Right.
Like Hurricane Katrina, the water was up. We lost the hot water tank. It was this far from the breaker box.
Right.
When the fire department came, knocked at the door, and sub-pumped using their hoses all the water out of every home on this block.
Right.
They had to pump out their basements.
Because it's basically coming right in through the creek, right?
Yeah. Yes, and it was just something we dealt with, but we didn't have the chemicals that make you sick in that creek before this derailment.
Right.
They say legacy chemicals. No, I'm telling you, we played in that creek. My daughter, we had picnic lunches on the rocks. There was never a rainbow sheen.
Right. Right, and yeah, and I mean, for folks too, Sulphur Run is the one where, especially in the beginning of this, where you could go literally anywhere and drop a rock and see all of the chemicals coming up. And imagine, again, when we were here the first couple times back in February, March, there was still snow on the ground. With snow melt and everything, it raises up the water in the creek. The cleanup was still going on. There was a lot of rain happening. All of that water, and these creeks were running a lot more, was ending up in basements like Krissy's here, with all of those chemicals that are still, we're actually this afternoon going to go and walk through the creeks with Christina Seisloff, who's been also out doing some work in the creeks and seeing where things are. Some of those creeks are still, I mean, not some of them. Sulphur Run is still contaminated. Parts of Leslie Run are still contaminated.
They have testing that Dr. Rick Shy had did with Randy and Christina that they will be revealing tomorrow, the testing results. And they do have a lot more chemicals than what the EPA can locate, and they've tested side by side.
Right.
Because they'll leave a stick where they test. So you know where to test the water. Now, these are residents that are paying for their own testing. Dr. Rick Shy has taken water sample after water sample after water sample. He would not have had to have did that. He did that to help those of us that's along here. Jamie Wallace, when the toxicologist from CTEH came in her home and seen the water, relocated immediately. But the only difference was she rented and didn't own her home.
Right. Yeah.
They don't want to get into all this with the homeowners.
Right. Thanks again for showing us down there and actually seeing like where that connection is, like literally right into the creek there, which is scary and insane. Also, that through all of this, they haven't. Again, you mentioned they capped the municipal building one because workers in there were getting sick, which they should do. Obviously, they should cap that. But you would think that it would make a whole lot of sense to also cap all of the other homes that are located right along the exact same creek with all of the same chemicals dealing with the same issue. Insane. You mentioned residents like Jamie and Rick and so many others, kind of needing to go out and do all of this testing because of the issues with the EPA over the last year and a half, not year and a half, but year at this point. I'm curious, at this point, you've been relocated from your home for about a year.
It'll be a year the first week in March next month.
What are kind of your next steps here? We're talking to some residents whose relocation has sort of like just ended or is about to end. What is the situation that you and your family are in as it pertains to relocation?
Well, a couple months back, before they announced that they were ending the relocation help in February, I knew nothing had been done for my house to help. There was no plan. So I started asking them about extending the lease. So right before that, they agreed to extend the lease until May. So we are only safe till May. And as long as this is taking, it's scary. I had a meeting with Norfolk Southern to discuss what they were planning on. And I was asked what I wanted done to the home in order to get us back. And I got scolded by Alan Shaw at a meeting for not believing CTEH, questioning them. So I finally shared something that I had kept to myself for almost a year. When I went to the command center in those mornings, what would happen is...
Was that?
Could we pause that?
Yeah, you're good.
Second? Did you have... I'm doing that interview. I think this is right here in the mailbox for Lori. I forgot. There you go.
Thank you.
All right, I'll see you, Docs. I'm so sorry. Oh.
That's okay. It doesn't matter.
Did I mess up?
No, you're fine. You're fine. No, you're good. Here, let's go back to. I want to get to the morning things in a second, so I'll jump back in here. You mentioned there that you were like scolded in a meeting by Alan Shaw. Were you in a meeting with Alan Shaw together, or?
Yes.
Okay, can you talk about that a little bit? Yeah.
This is when the division started in East Palestine. The churches had got phone calls from Norfolk Southern asking them for the church leaders, the pastors, and some of their parishioners to meet with Mr. Shaw at the Centenary Methodist Church, the command center. And there was probably maybe 35, 40 people there, maybe even 50. And he wanted to know how he could help East Palestine. And the first woman that stood up apologized to Mr. Shaw for those people that are speaking to the reporters because they're an embarrassment and they just want their town back to normal and want the reporters to go away. And then another woman stood up and discussed property value, that she was concerned for her daughter. And I understand that could be some people's retirement and things. But I stood up and I said to him, what are we going to do about the health? Because it was just that morning that I was at work and a mother brought her child that was in Head Start in, cupping the blood running out of this child's nose, and she didn't have any paper towels or napkins in the car and was crying, asking me, do you have a towel? Do you have a rag? That sat with me all day. So when it was my turn to speak, I said, what are you going to do to help the people that are sick? I see people every day with rashes. I lose my voice into my shift. What are you going to do to help? And he says, I don't know what it's going to take for you people to believe that it is safe. CTEH says their testing is safe. The EPA says their testing safe. Our testing safe. What's it going to take? And I said, well, you know, Mr. Shaw, my mom always told me like this. When I was young, if you run with trash, you're going to be associated as trash. When you Google CTEH, the first thing you see, falsification of document, BP oil spill. I said, sir, you hired trash.
Yeah,
that was our conversation.
That's absolutely wild that just to be so blatantly in public talking to you like that, raising extremely valid concerns, especially considering, again, we even have video of EPA official Mark Durno admitting that the residential home tests that were done with CTEH and the EPA, the devices weren't sensitive enough to pick up the chemicals of concern. Some wouldn't even pick up the chemicals that were there. That's not me saying that. That is folks like Dr. Andrew Welton from Purdue University, yes. Other, folks like Judith Ank, a former EPA official, yes. and other folks who've talked to us about it on and off the record. The fact that the CEO of Norfolk Southern would talk so rudely and incorrectly about this sort of thing when it is obviously affecting so many people's health in this town it's shameful. It's shameful that that's how that conversation went.
Well, those meetings continued with selected residents, and They continued, but I was not invited back.
Right, you
to
weren't
them.
selected. Right,
Yes.
they basically pick the people who are going to tell them what they want to hear to get the feedback.
Yes.
And otherwise, you know, they don't want to hear it.
Yes.
That's ridiculous. Previously, I cut you off before. You were saying that there was one thing that you hadn't shared before. I don't know if you remember the train of
Yes.
thought you were going down, but
Oh,
yeah.
definitely. It pertains to this.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had went up to the assistant center,
Mm-hmm.
right up the corner, and they started asking me if I had a list of things that I wanted done to my home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have sat on this, like I said, for almost a year. And I looked at them and I said, well, why is it that I got scolded for not believing CTEH, but after a year, you don't believe them?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So I informed him when I'd go to the command center
Mm-hmm.
to listen to find out why the creek was filling the home up,
Mm-hmm.
why they were not doing anything to help us,
Mm-hmm.
and why we were getting sick. Turns out that I overheard why I was deemed a special circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
They were well aware. The air tester had recommended tearing down this home right beside me, and the home right at the beginning of that tunnel, due to the water in our basements. I often wondered why pictures were taken of my basement, the water lines, because she recommended that
Right.
to Norfolk Southern, and they have had a year to tell me.
Right. And no one has said that.
Nobody
no one has
has came forth.
Yep.
So when I told them that I was aware of that and wanted that document, they seemed a little surprised and told me they needed some time. So I gave them a week and I went back. And they had my air testing result, which we all know
Right.
they
We've
didn't
seen-
write correctly.
Yeah.
The EPA lied along with CTEH on that. They did not write accurate results. He did not want to reveal his reading in front of me, the resident. And he didn't want to have to call his supervisor when that air tester spoke to him like a drill sergeant to get him to do the right thing.
Right. And we did we'll make sure the link is somewhere in here. We did an in-depth interview kind of talking about that experience
Yes.
too, if folks are interested. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just to kind of recap some of this, because the tunnel that Krissy's referring to is a tunnel that Sulphur Run, which runs directly from the derailment site right through the center of town. The creek itself, that is still contaminated to this day, runs through a tunnel underneath some of the homes and the backyards of some of these homes, right on this street here, right next to Market Street in downtown East Palestine. And it often, again, is flooding into these basements. And what Krissy is saying is that, there's very likely a document somewhere that says that these houses were at one point recommended to be torn down.
There is proof of that. They want mine. I want them to show me theirs first.
Right.
I want the original document and not just my recording of it.
Right.
They have, when they gave me that piece of paper and said, is this it? No. And another thing that they didn't have is Arcadius had picked up benzene in my soil at a higher level than what the EPA was happy with. But it didn't go against OSHA guidelines, is what was explained to me by Mark Durno. When I said, Mark, OSHA is an 8-hour workday.
Right.
My parents are shut-ins 24 hours a day.
Right. And your parents are elderly, and I mean, it's,
With my stepfather is going to be 90 next month and has the start of dementia. And my mother's 82 with Parkinson's.
Right.
So, and COPD.
Right. So I would imagine they're going to be much more sensitive to these chemicals.
Yes.
That doesn't seem to be of concern to the EPA or Norfolk Southern in this case.
Knowing that these chemicals cause Parkinson's,
Right.
what would they do?
Right.
Hers has already progressed in the past year.
Yeah.
We've seen that because she had been exposed to that on Friday night and Saturday until we left on Sunday.
Right.
She was exposed to those chemicals. Then we stayed in Pennsylvania and the plume went right over us.
Right. Yep. Yep. I want to ask you about some recent news that we got. So the day before yesterday, we found out that President Biden, who was notably absent from the first 11 months of this, there were calls for him to come early on, and he never came. Occasionally his press secretary would be asked about it. She would say some word salad, eventually saying, yeah, he's going to get there at some point, blah, blah, blah. They've officially announced that he's going to be here at some point in February. What is your initial reaction to Biden saying he's going to come visit in February at this point?
There's a lot that needs done. We need health care. He needs to sign for that. We need help with relocation. This is why I want to speak to him. I asked on that porch, standing on those steps, February 16th, when Michael Regan was coming to my home, I said, we need President Biden and we need FEMA housing.
Yep. And I mean, it's been 50 weeks. Yeah.
A year of people being stuck, my friends and my loved ones being exposed.
Right.
There is no way to make that right, but you need to stop it from happening.
Right.
It is time that people listen. It is time that if you want to stay, if you're not having health problems and you want to stay, as long as you know the risk, that's your decision. But for those that are trapped here because of financial, they need out. I don't care if it's Norfolk Southern or our government. Somebody needs to take the initiative to help people get out. I deserve this home replaced. My mother deserves this. My stepfather is a veteran from the Korean War, 90 years old, and nobody's helping. So I expect a lot from him.
No, and
by coming. I do.
And frankly, I mean, he better. I hope that he comes and does sit down and talk to folks like you, and talk to folks like the folks that, if someone from the Biden team sees this and wants us to make connections to people, I can give you a long list of people who would love to speak to you.
Yes,
whether they agree with you politically or not, they want you to know exactly what is going on here, because there's been...
He says he's the listener.
Yeah.
I need him to listen to me.
Yeah.
We were left out. Anyone that had issues was left out from the help that President Biden sent. He met with the FEMA director, Ghost is what I refer, because I had called, texted, emailed, emailed. He came to East Palestine and he met with the select few.
And you're talking about earlier in the summer, President Biden did sign. It didn't go as far as it needed to go, but he essentially authorized FEMA to have an investigator sent into East Palestine, and the role was supposed to actually come in and check in on the progress, see what's going on, And you're not the only one who's told me that they tried to reach out to this FEMA person, and they basically ignored all calls and only met with a select few.
Yeah. And the select few that was met with were the ones that are not having issues. So, as I'm asking our mayor, I'm asking President Biden's staff, I'm asking anyone at all that can help, please let people speak that are having issues. Please, whether you like us or not, please help. Because we have been silenced. We have went through so much. We need help. And you know what? It is a win-win. If they want to stay in town, they don't have to deal with us anymore. We can leave. Help us. Help us, because this is not PTSD. My health, every lymph node in my body is inflamed. I have a chain of them in the groin area. I have them under the arms, by the breasts, in my throat. I've had internal ultrasounds, diagnostic mammograms. It's not cancer. They don't know why. It's inflamed. Now they want to check for heavy metals, because I spoke with the biochemist, and he said this happens to scientists in labs when they accidentally poison themselves with these chemicals. We need help. We need help. And you can't tell somebody this. I never thought I would leave this home. It was home. It might not be much to some people, but it was my safe place. It's not safe anymore. If I have to bring my family back here, I'm going to be responsible for killing my family. I can't even be in here without a panic attack coming on. And when you hear that train...
Right. I can't even imagine what you're going through, and it's extremely frustrating to listen to what you and so many other people here are needing to deal with. And I hope that when President Biden does come, he does come and listen to folks, and the first words out of his mouth after doing so needs to be, there were lots of mistakes made along the way, and we need to course correct now. Yes. We need to, if people want to leave, I don't care how we need to do it, we need to get them out now. Yes. And things need to be tried to correct it. Unfortunately, a lot of the damage is done. But a resident I spoke to yesterday, Candace, said, being exposed to 1 year isn't good, but it's better than being exposed for 5 years or 10 years or however long you're here. So, it's too late, right, to make it right, to use Norfolk Southern's terms, to make it right. But you certainly can be doing a hell of a lot better than what's been done so far.
Candace have to be in the home with them babies.
Yeah. It's terrible. Krissy, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you. This is ridiculous.
It is. It is. Something's got